Several years ago, I began to promote the idea that the key to counter the feminist hate movement would come in the guise of an economic collapse. Since then, I've written a handful of articles on the subject, and the idea has gained traction in some quarters of the manosphere. Some MGTOW, however, notably Stardust in Germany, CS MGTOW, and Nico Chosky in England, have dismissed it. Clive explained he rejects the Austrian economics idea of a business cycle. In response, I suggested that he spend some time reading Martin Armstrong's blog, linked below. Armstrong has amassed a huge database of economic data spanning thousands of years, which clearly reveals that there are multiple cycles spanning the globe, and that all of the major economies are now linked. And in my own Cycles of Bigotry and Sexism video, linked below, I pointed out social and cultural cycles as well. Now, I'm not interested in getting into a big argument with them or anybody else on the subject. The historical data is incontrovertible. Those who look at it and don't see the cycles will be unprepared when the cycles change. Time will tell. But in a video I posted a year ago, linked below, I tried to articulate the argument not in support of cycles, but in support of our preparation for them. Entitled Wealth, Women, Economic Collapse, and the End of the Misandrous Milieu, I wrote it 4 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. Before I get into that, a word of advice for young MGTOW out there. Listen to Aaron Clary and Vention MGTOW. Yes, I know, Aaron has a lot of issues. He takes glee in lashing out at people, and sometimes something I didn't know until I heard Turd Flinging Monkey mention it in his first Twitch podcast a couple days ago, linked below, was that Aaron was involved in doxing Stardust. While I have no respect for anonymous bullies, I understand why many MGTOW need to remain anonymous, and I respect that. Doxing is a major violation, and what would be the point of doxing Stardust of all people? Attacking him reminds me of that great Thomas More quote from the movie A Man for All Seasons. Why, Richard, it profits a man nothing to give his soul for the whole world, but for whales? So yes, Aaron is not the most honorable man, but I learned the hard way to accept wisdom where I find it. Aaron may be a jerk sometimes, but he's wise about many things, and you could learn from him. If we had Aaron and the internet when I was a young man, I'd be more like Vention MGTOW today. I've got 8 years of college, a lot of math and science, 2 worthless degrees, and having run afoul of white knight and feminist HR people more times than I care to remember, I finally gave up on pursuing a career. I now work in a job that requires only a high school diploma, and I've made it very clear I have no interest in advancing. We used to call that going galt. Many still do. When you combine that with abandoning the institution of marriage and such, in this community we call that MGTOW. And I would have been so much better off if I'd followed a path more like Vention from the very beginning. So when he speaks about Bitcoin, I listen and think that is something to do. But not just yet, not for me, not until I build up enough capital to diversify into Bitcoin. Up until a couple years ago, I was happily working to build a portfolio of stocks and sectors that were in a bear market. You always hear buy low, sell high, but then most people buy dear on greed and sell cheap on fear. When are stocks in a sector cheap? When that sector is in a bear market, so I was buying low. But then my dad challenged me to do something that would pay off sooner. While I still expect my bear market portfolio to do well, and about half a dozen of those stocks are already showing gains of greater than 50%, some over 100%, I accepted his challenge. It took more than a year on a very steep learning curve, but after listening to dozens of experts, I've settled on 2, Martin Armstrong and Gary Savage. While in public these two seem to be at odds, behind their respective paywalls they are surprisingly in sync. So while I barely broke even last year, for the first 5 months of 2016 my trading portfolio is up almost 500%. Bang for the buck, Gary's service is better because he makes specific trade recommendations, while Marty expects you to come up with your own trades based on the information he provides. This is not a paid endorsement, I'm just one of their subscribers, and both blogs are linked below. For the Backlash at Backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mechlin.